and then I will share my screen, and Nancy, the floor is yours.
Okay, and Molly, I just sent you probably a little simpler
Oh, sure.
um, page that you might want to share for folks. It's a little bit more appropriate for directly for providers
Got
about the
it.
difference between cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting,
All right.
because that's a big thing I've always harped on, even prior to this unprecedented time.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
And maybe some of you have seen this. This form is of this guidance, this helpful thing, is available through the state website, through the COVID-19 resources. It is the cleaning and sanitizing guidance. And when did we put this out? I want to say it was,
2000.
we updated it a little bit. I don't remember the date. It was March, end of March. That has been updated just a smidgen, nothing huge. We found a couple of typos. Anyway, so cleaning is the physical removal of dirt and germs using soap and water, and then you're going to rinse the soap off because who wants to eat soap, right? The beautiful thing about soap and water is that it doesn't kill anything.
Hey, I
That's
lost
not
my
its
sound.
intent.
Oh, never mind.
No, we can hear you. So the soap doesn't have to kill anything. What it does is it mixes, like when you hand wash, it mixes with the oils that are on your hands and breaks those oils down. And when you break those oils down, the dirt and germs that are sticking to your hands go down the drain with the soap water and the oils. So cleaning, washing your hands is really a really important thing. An added benefit of soap, just mild old soap, the stuff you buy cheap, half the price at the store. Wonderful thing about it is it has this property to break down oil, and this lovely coronavirus that we have, as well as any other coronavirus, has a very fatty outside layer. And once you destroy or disrupt that outside layer, that fatty layer, that virus then cannot infect you. So it essentially kills the virus. It renders it neutral. So soap and water is a huge thing. I can't stress it enough. So when we're looking at our child cares at, all these different surfaces, if we can soap and water them, let the children soap and water them, you're going to be doing yourself a favor. Okay, the more you soap and water, the better off things are. So that's something to think about there. After we clean, though, we need to take a little step farther. Good cleaning can get rid of 90% of dirt and germs, anything that we can see. So that's at a very important step. But for our food contact surfaces, anything that's high touch, we want to make sure we're sanitizing. Okay. Sanitizing is the use of a chemical or heat above 170 degrees to reduce the level of germs to a greater level. Okay. Not completely. We're not getting rid of all of them for forever, but we're doing it to a greater level, one that most of our bodies can tolerate. Okay. So we think of food contact surfaces, things like that. There are a handful of chemicals out there that can do this. Chlorine is one of them. And bleach is your easiest, most plentiful source of chlorine. But it's not the only one. Okay, it's not the only one. We've got quaternary ammonia or quat products, iodine, but iodine might stain things because it's kind of a reddish brown color. We've got silver citrate. That's one that you see in some of the ready to use things, and peroxyacetic acid. All these formulations can be used on food contact surfaces. Okay. When we're talking about our chlorine, it's at a 50 parts per million, 50 to 200 parts per million. We're talking our quaternary ammonia solutions. That's going to be 200 to 400 parts per million of that quaternary ammonia in the solution. And of course, we have to use test strips. So depending on where you're looking at sanitizing, you might want to use something that's, if it's just a small area that's not frequently sanitized and convenience is important, you might want to choose a ready-to-use product. Okay. Some of those ready-to-use products, some of the ready-to-use products that are out there, though, are scented, and typically those are not good for food contact surfaces. That's just a general rule, but by and large, if it's scented, has added scent to it, you can't use it on food contact surfaces, which kind of makes sense because that's just extra chemical, right? And we don't want to eat that stuff. So any place that the kids are touching a lot of and their hands are going to their mouth, tabletops where they eat, some of the toys that kind of invite pretend play eating that might go to the mouth with your older children, those things all need to be sanitized with something good for food contact surfaces. Okay, so that's most of the stuff in your classrooms, right? And if we do that more frequently, maybe we don't have to disinfect, and that should only be done at the end of the day. Okay, that's the use of a chemical or heat with the intent to completely rid a surface of germs. Okay, using this strength of chemicals or high heat, it cannot be used on all surfaces. They can damage surfaces. If you use straight bleach on some surfaces, you know what happens if you get straight bleach on your clothes, on your blue jeans. All right, it's going to damage it. Not only does it bleach it out, it also impacts the fibers and breaks them down a little bit. So we do want to be careful with what we're choosing. So this particular handout has talks about the different places where you want to use the different things. You know, your kitchen surfaces, tabletops, your mouthable toys. I just went backwards there. And then you've got your public touch points, which you shouldn't have too many of those in your schools anymore. But you are going to have touch points that your individual employees and the kids touch. And so you do want to pay a little more attention to those things and make sure that you are disinfecting those. Okay. And that's that third column. And then I want to just mention here cloth. What happens with cloth, especially with any type of germ. You want to make sure you're not shaking laundry because that puts things back into the air. You want to make sure that you are washing according to the manufacturer's directions in the warmest possible water with soap, because again, that's going to pull things out and help release the dirt and germs. Dirt and germs, when they sit on a solid surface, as I'm looking at my kitchen counter, if I drop water there, it's going to sit there. And if I drop water on my pant leg, it's going to soak in and I can't get the water out. It's the same thing that happens with germs. It is more difficult to get them out of cloth. They're not going to re-aerosolize, go back into the air anywhere near as much as if they're on a solid surface, unless of course you shake things. So do we need to worry about disinfecting our cloth things in our environments? Probably not. Probably not so much. Sanitizing them if you do need to do anything at all, but pretty much soap and water. And they're gonna collect the dirt and germs, and they're not one to release them too easily. Okay, it takes the actions of somebody else to release them. Either you shake it or you pound it to fluff the pillows, things like that. So I know a lot of people worry about things that you can't clean with your hands so much. Floors, carpets, things like that. I would say unless the kids are crawling on the floors, that's not a big concern. I know there's another that our CCR and ours have a page that helps them with their CARES decisions for the different types of things as they're guiding folks into what they might purchase and what might be reimbursed and things like that. One of the items that's been on there, I know, has been steamers, floor steamers. And let me talk about floor steamers for a while. So we have two kinds. We have the household kind. We've all seen those, right? And then we have the industrial kind. Now, the industrial kind is a big, heavy-duty piece of machinery that you're probably not going to have. You're not going to use it on a daily basis in childcare. It's not something that you're going to purchase. They're heavy. They require somebody knowledgeable in how to use them. Okay, they are effective. All right, they can be effective. What they do is they take water and typically a chemical, okay, but they can be water. They have to get that water up to above 180 degrees for it to be effective. And at that point, it has to remain 180 degrees over that spot on the floor for a minute. Okay. Remember, just as if you're using a commercial dishwasher, you have to have at least a 60-second rinse on a plate temperature of 160. Same, and that's to sanitize. So same rules apply. We still have to have a dwell time with hot water. Now, what does that do? Well, those industrial machines actually push water into the surface. That's not so good on some of our floors. We don't want water going underneath and perhaps damaging the subfloor. Those home style machines, lickety split, you've got your bathroom clean, right? And that's a little bitty pad. So you would have to, if it gets the water up above 180 degrees, you're going to have to allow that steamer to sit on each spot for 60 seconds. You know how long it's going to take you to do that 6 by 8 foot bathroom? A long time. So are those practical? Yeah, you have to weigh it. You have to weigh it. If I could recommend one thing for childcares to buy, one thing that is worth every penny, I would say microfiber cloths. Yep, simple microfiber cloths. Buy a case of them. They're wonderful. They gather up more dirt and germs than a paper towel, than a regular cloth. You can wash them and reuse them. You can use them with soap and water, and they're going to be more effective. They're just wonderful things. They're simple, but they're wonderful. So that would be something that I would definitely recommend. The kids can use those, staff can use those. Again, reusable. I don't know what else was on your list there, Molly, to go back and look at the email.
A lot of those questions were revolved around floor cleaning, so steam
Yeah.
cleaners, carpet cleaners, and then also a lot of requests have come in about fogging or the way to clean an actual entire center or home, the entire area, whether it's fogging and then the other options.
Okay, fogging. Fogging, again, requires some sort of, most of these all require some sort of chemical to be used. And when you have a chemical, you also have a dwell time. Okay, so if you are using a fogger, most foggers, there are a couple out there that use ionized water. They still have a dwell time. But most foggers will have a chemical that has to be used in that dwell time. Many of them are best left to professionals because of the chemicals involved. And when you've got a chemical that's in there, it could be a quat chemical, it could be some other type of chemical. In order to disinfect a surface like you would in hospitals, you have to, they have a 10-minute dwell time if it's a quat product. Is that practical? You have to make sure the surface gets wet and stays wet for 10 minutes. So some of these things are not as easy as they might seem. They're not as good an idea as they might seem because they take a lot of time. If you're using a chemical, you need to have appropriate PPE. That means goggles, N95 masks. Those have to be fitted in order to be used appropriately. You have to know how to fit them. And some sort of outerwear over your clothing to protect your clothing. So there's quite a bit involved with those foggers. Yeah, I know everybody's out to make a buck right now. That goes with the foggers. It goes with the ultraviolet light. Ultraviolet light, you can't use that when people are present. okay, because it can be dangerous to your eyes. So you don't want to use those when people are present. Again, there's a dwell time. And for some of them, I've seen you have to have things underneath them for 10 to 20 minutes. So again, they're not all that they're cracked up to be. You have to read the fine print. And we go back to what's the best thing to do? Clean every surface as much as you can. Don't worry about the things you can't touch. Okay, think about a hospital room. In there, you might worry about the things you can't touch. You know, the things on the hospital bed, the creases and crevices, you know, the springs, what, you know, you try to clean a hospital bed. Anybody tried to do that? It's almost impossible. So for them, fogging, and then they can shut the room, shut the door to the room. For them, it makes sense. And it certainly saves staff time as opposed to trying to clean in all the little crevices. They just spray down the room and let it sit. So what works for one business may not work for the next.
Nancy, we've also had lots of requests for air purifiers.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there's a square footage per air purifier and things of that nature. So if you could speak to
Right,
that.
right. So those are positives. I would say that, and you do, again, you have to read labels. You have to know what you're purchasing. You have to get something that is appropriate for your facility. So talk to your HVAC people. There are electrostatic types of air purifiers. I would stay away from the ones with the ultraviolet lights. Again, because they're not meant to be used when people are inhabiting a building. I don't know if any of you knew this, but years ago, I remember going to grade school where we had ultraviolet lights that were in the classroom, and they had it was like they were in a curved thing that went up against the wall. And when the custodial staff would come through after everybody had left for the day and turn them on at night, and then they'd come in first thing in the morning and turn them off. So they were only on at nighttime. I don't know, they stopped doing that some time ago. But there has been some talk of going back to ultraviolet lights in classrooms and things like that. Did it in kitchens. A lot of commercial kitchens had ultraviolet lights in them. Just interesting little trivia there. But the air purifiers are definitely a positive thing. I would say that one that covers your whole facility is better than one that would be in a room, because you're going to have a cord, has to be plugged in, it's around the kids. So one that it would be like a whole house if you're a home provider, or for your center, one that's part of your central air and heat would be the best choice. Yeah, get with your HVAC people. They'll steer you in the right direction.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you, Nancy. We would like to open it up to questions. I know that it can be difficult in a Zoom format and knowing who's going to speak when. So if you do have any questions, feel free to throw those in the chat and we can read them out loud, and Nancy can do her best to answer them. And if you have specific questions about the CARES grant itself, there are a few other program directors on here and we can field those questions. I think the biggest thing to note is obviously we wanted to hear best practices and the right process and materials to use when it comes to cleaning. With that said, there are going to be things that are not allowable by this specific grant because of where the dollars are coming from. So we want to get the best information out to you, but just please remember that those are two different things. We want to make sure that we are awarding grants and making sure that those go to the right materials and processes, but there are some things that we are not allowed to award. So obviously Nancy can take all the health and safety questions, and the other program directors and myself will do our best to answer any questions you have specifically about the grant. So if you would like to go ahead and unmute yourself if you have a question, or put it in the chat, we will do our best to answer. I do have one comment or question in the chat. It says, could you talk to others about where they're sourcing their vinyl exam gloves? They're finding them, sorry, I just had someone go in front of what I was saying. We're finding them to be scarce and 5 to 6 times as costly as they used to be.
Yes, they are more expensive. With gloves, I would say be judicious about their use. Okay, when you wear gloves, I have found that staff, and I was director of nursing at a residential facility for 100 and some odd kids for 12 years before I came to the state 8 years ago. And at one point I took gloves away from staff because they were abusing them. They were not washing their hands and they were wearing gloves all day. So any germs that they touched, they're putting them on the doorknobs, on the pens, on the clipboards, instead of washing their hands. So be judicious about your use of gloves. Use them when you need to protect yourself, because that's their purpose, is to protect yourself. Okay. So that will help reduce your use of them. Don't reuse them, because those vinyl or whatever the other, there's a color, another neoprene, some other different varieties of gloves, because they do break down with wear. So don't reuse them. They are task specific. Don't try to wash them. The only kind of gloves that you can reuse are the kind that you would use for dishwashing. You know, those big, heavy vinyl gloves for dishwashing. Those can be reused, but only for dishwashing. It's part of the cost of business these days, unfortunately, it's not a nice thing to say. I hate saying it, but it's the truth. It's just something that we have to live with. So again, that's why I say be judicious with your use of gloves. And as far as getting them, wherever you can get them, get them.
All right, thank you. There was a question posted just so that everyone can see. It says, will we be notified if we are denied for the grant? I had been asked to provide more detail 2 weeks ago, but I haven't heard anything. The next round of funding will be sent out or notified on November 24th. We are doing all notifications of awards, denials, and if the application is on hold, we are doing them all in the same day. So you will be notified on the 24th of some sort of status update as to where you are. As far as there was a question about requests for equipment or supplies that we look more favorably upon. The goal of this grant is to get dollars in the hands of those things that are most needed. Obviously, there are a lot of needs out there and every program has their own specific need. So it's not that there's necessarily something that we're looking more favorably upon, but also we're looking to the reasoning behind the need. So how are you connecting whatever it is that you're asking for? How are you connecting it back to how my program is going to remain open and how this will support the program, the families, and the children. So with these dollars, it's really important that they're related to COVID, because that's where the CARES funding is coming from. So we're definitely looking for that. And then again, we're looking that there's only so much that we're rolling out each time. So there may be an opportunity that your application had all of the right information needed and necessary, but we cannot fund you this round. So that's something also that we are needing to make sure that we're being reasonable and making sure that we're not spending more than we're giving, or that we're not giving out more than we have in our pocket to disperse to everyone. It says,
hey,
how long
Molly?
is, oh, yes. Sure.
Can I ask a quick question? It's Vicki. Can I ask a quick question about the 24th? So on the 24th, should they expect to hear at a certain time, or will it be throughout the day that they will receive some sort of communication?
It's a good question. It actually is throughout the entire day. We have a lot of applications. I don't know if we're up to 800 yet, but we have a lot of applications and we need to individually contact each person through the submittable software that you're using to submit your application. So it will be throughout the entire day. We start in the morning and we spend the entire day on the computer notifying all of the folks in our SDA. So it will be the entire day. Good question, Vicki.
And then it will be the 24th statewide. So every county, every provider in every county across the state should plan on hearing something on the 24th.
Correct. And
Okay.
and all of those notifications go through the submittable software. So if it's 6 o'clock on the 24th and you think you haven't heard anything, log into your account, into submittables and check and make sure, because those are all supposed to notify you via the email that you registered for your account. But you can see all of the activity there and you would be able to see what message was posted for you.
Thanks, Molly.
No problem. There's another question that says, how long is this grant if I can't get approved? Currently, we do not have a time frame on the grant. So we, of course, will be notifying and posting on the website every time that awards will be made. So that's the best place to find any updates is going to be on that website. Let's see. Nancy, I think this is a question for you. When do you think child care teachers should wear gloves when feeding infants, every diaper change, food prep, serving food? So lots of questions.
Okay. What's required versus what makes sense? Really, the only time you're required to wear gloves is when you are passing out ready-to-eat food. You either have to use gloves or tongs. You can't touch ready-to-eat food with bare hands. And your employer can require you to wear gloves when you are cleaning up a potentially infectious blood or body fluid spill. Okay, those are really the only two requirements. Now, when does it make sense? What were you doing before COVID? Think about what you were doing before COVID. Why would you do anything different now? Okay, we know a lot more about this germ now than we did 6 weeks ago, 12 weeks ago for sure. And we've learned that good hand washing, good hand hygiene is as good as wearing gloves as far as protection. You wear gloves and you touch your face, you're going to get infected. Okay. You have bare hands, you're more likely to do hand hygiene so that when you do touch your face inadvertently, you're not infecting yourself. Okay, it's about our behaviors. It's not so much about the gloves. So no, I would not wear gloves when feeding an infant. What difference does it make? I'm going to wash my hands before I feed the infant, and I'm going to wash them afterwards. Putting on a pair of gloves wastes a pair of gloves. Diaper change. Well, depends on what's in that diaper. Okay. we don't like to necessarily deal with some surprises with our bare hands. But if it's just a wet diaper and it's a quick diaper change and you're not worried about anything, you don't have all sorts of things going on. And again, you're going to wash your hands before and you're washing your hands after. Why dirty a pair of gloves if you don't have to? So it's a lot of common sense and making sure that you're doing proper behaviors. If you have staff who want to wear gloves all the time, ask them why. Ask them what the gloves are doing for them besides making their hands hot and sweaty. Okay. Because I bet they can't answer you. My staff couldn't answer me. One thing I used to teach all the time, I say, if you don't have to touch it, don't. If you think you might have to touch it, we're talking about body substances that are not your own. If you think you might have to touch it, put on a pair of gloves. Regardless, wash your hands. 3 steps. Don't touch it unless you have to. If you think you might have to, wear the gloves. And then, regardless, wash your hands.
Good advice to remember regardless of what situation you're in. A next question on here says, can we reapply for the CARES grant for different supplies than what we were denied for? So yes, if you have applied and your application was denied, you are able to reapply for different requests, or if you have the same request, but perhaps you're able to connect it and give a better explanation as far as how that is supporting the health and safety of children during COVID, then yes, we do encourage you to reapply. Can I apply? Oh, go ahead.
And just to look at the Brighter Futures page with the FAQs, we keep trying to direct everyone there. That's where we're putting a lot of the updates. So be sure to frequently check that page. And always, if you have specific questions, feel free to reach out during office hours, and then also add to your CCR&R.
Awesome, thank you. The question was posted, can I apply now? Yes, these applications are ongoing, so apply now or tomorrow, whenever that makes the most sense for you. And then there was another question at one point that was asked of me regarding, I have applied, I haven't heard anything, can I apply again? So if you have an open application, you can only have one at a time, unless it's an emergency application. As we've noted, there are two tracks to the CARES grant. One track is if you had to close due to a positive COVID case, you can make a request through the emergency track, and that lets you request those PPE or the cleaning opportunities to get you back open. You can make an emergency application and then also a support application at the same time, but that is the time you can have two applications open at once. It looks like Vicki posted the Brighter Futures Indiana, the website, in the chat, so you can copy and paste that and actually go and see all of the FAQs, which again are consistently updated. The office hours, such as we're hosting today, are currently every other Thursday from 1:30 to 2:30 Eastern time. This is a great opportunity if you have questions about your application. Vicki is our host, and she likes to answer any questions you have, and if she can't answer them, she will find the answer to you. This is also where you'll find when the round of funding will be announced. I know that is a lot of the questions that our CCR&Rs are receiving, as well as the CARES line. So that would be a great place for you to check prior to calling, because I know that then to get back to you does take some time. So that's a great way for you to look for yourself. The next question, I applied for emergency grant due to positive COVID case and I haven't responded. When should I expect for that request? So someone would be in touch with you, obviously by the 24th, on the day when everything is announced. That is when all awards will be given. If you've not heard something specifically and it is an emergency grant, that's where I would encourage you to reach out to your specific CCR&R, your resource and referral agency, if it is an emergency grant, because obviously that is a little bit different than the support track. Let's see. Nancy, question for you. What are your thoughts on portable preschool hand washing stations as added resource for better accessibility to hand washing?
Licensing has weighed in on this, and I don't recall what was said. So I'm going to have to plead the fifth on this one.
Per the grant, just so everyone is aware, that is not a fundable request due to the recycling of the water. And I do know, I agree with you, Nancy, licensing did weigh in on that. And so that's something that we will look into to make sure we get the correct information.
Yeah, usually I'm on top of things, and I knew there was a reason that they were not looking at them favorably.
Correct.
And Nancy, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us this afternoon. We appreciate having you with us because it's incredibly helpful. There have been a lot of questions out there.
Oh, I'm more than happy to do this. I was on a call this morning with Head Start directors throughout the state, and it's been a different day for me because I'm dealing so much with directly with providers, and I do enjoy it.
All right, I think that's all of the questions in the chat. If for some reason I missed something, throw it back in there so it pops up for me. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to unmute and ask? And these again, per Nancy or for the grant itself.
Molly, this is Vicki again. I just wanted to make sure that I mention that I put in the chat If you have any additional questions, the email address that you can send an email to, and also the phone number that will get you directly through to the CARES support. If you call and you get the voicemail, leave a voicemail, and somebody will make sure that they get back to you. Or you can always send an email, and then we can make sure that we get you the information that you need. We try to have a pretty quick turnaround. So I made sure that I put the info in the chat, but that info is also found at the main brighterfuturesindiana.org/Indiana Cares page as well. So if you aren't able to get it today, then you can find it there as well. If you have any questions, just make sure that you reach out, because we're here to help and we want to make sure that we are able to support you.
So if you don't know who your local CCR&R agency is, feel free to put that in the chat too, or let one of Vicki know, and she will get you directed to the right one.
Are there any other questions out there for Nancy or the CARES grant team? So as mentioned, this is being recorded, so we will have this posted on the website as well. So if you have friends who weren't able to join us, or you are getting on late due to all of the busy things that you have going on, please go ahead and check there. We'll hopefully have it up by tomorrow, and then you'll be able to review all of the helpful information, obviously, that Nancy shared with us, and some of the answers to the questions that were posed. So that's it for our more of our presentation today. If you want to stay on and ask questions, please feel free to do so. But other than that, we are finished for the day. So thank you so much for joining us. Vicki, have you had anything else come through the CARES line? Any other questions or things that we need to look into? Obviously, I'm going to get the answer on the portable sinks, but is there anything else you can think of?
Let me look at my notes really quickly, because I keep notes for everybody that calls me. Okay. Actually, for the most part, recently, it's just been people who are checking the status and wanting to double check when they will be able to hear. And so being able to say November 24th has been helpful. And people are just excited to find out on the 24th. So I've been telling people that they will hear throughout the day and not all at once. So if they hear somebody else heard, not to get nervous, that it still might take a little bit of time, but that everybody will be reached out to on the 24th. So that's really been the questions. I got one question the other day about dishwashers, and if that was allowable, trying to see. And then just a lot more people who are finding that they're having to close due to an emergency. And so closing due to an emergency, and then figuring out what the process looks like, and because it's a little bit different. And so being able to walk them through the process and how it differs. And then, you know, programs that are like, hey, I filled out an application and then now we had to close. So
Right.
now I need to kind of switch up my requests. And so a few more of those emergency applications or questions are coming in. And so being able to answer questions about that has been really helpful as well. And then individuals who then also have questions about the childcare closure assistance grant, and then being able to send them the information for that as well, or the link to that, because I don't have a lot of information, but to send them to the right place so that they can get that information.
Awesome.
Well, Vicki, thank you first of all for being that frontline woman. I love your hair. It looks amazing, by the way.
Thank you.
But I thank you for answering everyone's questions, and also to anything that is SDA specific, to forwarding it on to us. And have you had a lot of Spanish calls by chance? I know that typically we get a few here and there, but I was just wondering.
I have not received one call in Spanish. I've received a few emails, and when I receive those emails, I forward those on, but
Right.
I have not received any calls.
Okay.
And I'm happy to be that frontline person. I'm enjoying it. So
Well, you are a very good person for it. So
thank you.
Nancy, you must be very busy with all these counties turning colors.
Not as busy as you might think. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty to do.
Yeah.
There's plenty to do, but there's a lot of people doing it. That's just it. I mean, we couldn't do this without you guys doing what you're doing. And when I was talking to the Head Start people, it's like, all of you are really more frontline than many of us are. I mean, even the licensing consultants are much more frontline. So it's, like I said, I enjoy these opportunities where I get to chat with the providers directly.
No,
Not just about food and health programs.
That's understandable. No, in fact, that's why I was late getting on to here, because I was with a provider sorting through different things and walking through things. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Nancy, thank you so much for taking the time to share. I know that for me, I know that when people are calling, I get questions about sanitizing and what should I be thinking about and what should I be asking for. And so really kind of having it out there in black and white, this is a go, this is a no-go, was really, really helpful. So thank you. I learned a lot, and then that kind of gives me additional information. And I know that the people who attended learned a lot too. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, and I will do the best. I know Molly sent me the invitation for the rest of the meetings for the year, and I'll do my best to at least get on them for a little while. Just because I think sometimes it helps the providers to know that there is somebody else out there who's, I sound like a negative Nancy sometimes with, no, you don't need this, and no, you don't need that. And that's, just somebody trying to make money off of you. But that's the truth. That is the honest truth.
Right. No, I remember the first meeting that we had together pre-COVID, back that in those years before, right? Because there's pre-COVID and then now. I remember when I saw you, I got so excited our first meeting that we were in together, because I went, oh my gosh, that's the name that I've seen on the form for so many years. Oh my goodness. It was nice to put a face to the name.
Yes. Yeah. And I see some providers that, oh yeah, I've approved grants for that person, and
Yeah.
I've done food and health programs for that person. And so it's interesting to see that as well.
Well, and I think it's great that Indiana keeps that connection, because you don't have that everywhere.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, I've talked to a lot of people who, on some of my other projects that I'm involved in other states,
Right.
and they're in a similar position with the state as I am, but they don't connect with the providers directly.
Exactly. That's what I've come across with some of my friends who are working in other states.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm happy to do it. I learn as much from them as they learn from me. They don't realize it, but I do.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like, wow, I never thought about that. How are you going to manage that one? Well, let's see.
Well, and that's the thing about this grant in particular, and with COVID in general, we've all had to think outside the box, and we are all coming up with alternatives to deal within this new reality that we're all living in.
Mm-hmm. That I said that those the same words this morning as I was on that call with the Head Start directors. I said, who would have thought, that we'd have to rethink how we're connecting with families. We connected with families pretty well for a long time, and we
Right.
had policies and procedures and all of this. And now this comes, and we have those policies and procedures that now have to be tweaked.
Right.
And it's made. I saw those directors striving to do everything that they can to reach people where they are, to listen more, to make sure people have what they need, much more so than you would have seen a year ago. That was just to hear their stories that they were telling. It was just amazing.
Yeah.
Just amazing. So yeah, they all need a pat on the back, all of our providers.
They absolutely do.
Yeah, not just dealing with, the families, but here if they have a case, then they call their health department. Depending on which nurse they talk to at their health department, they're going to get different instructions.
Right.
I talked to a provider this afternoon right before this, spent half an hour with her, and I said, "My goodness, you've called the health department how many times, and each time you got a different instruction. How? Yeah, I mean, we're learning. We're all learning. The
Oh,
best of us
absolutely.
are learning. The the people we look up to, Dr. Box, she's always learning. No one, yeah, we just couldn't
She's
imagine.
she is also amazing.
Yes, she is. Yes, Dr. Box, Dr. Sullivan,
Hmm.
Dr. Weaver, they're just, yeah, it's really interesting. I don't know how they fit everything they do into their days, and they all have kids. I don't have kids.
I go home to a cat, so I understand what you're saying, because I look at everyone around me and I am incredibly amazed at what everyone is able to do. In particular now, with e-learning taking place,
Hmm.
e-learning has made things so much more interesting, and just how everyone is able to balance everything is just incredible.
Yeah, yeah, that is very true.
See that there's been a few more people joining us. If you have any questions for Nancy or regarding the health and safety portion, or if there's anything regarding the grant, please feel free to drop it in the chat or unmute yourself and ask those questions. Nancy, the form that we
Hmm.
shared today, is that something that you feel comfortable we could post on
Oh
the
yes.
website?
Oh
Okay,
yeah. Yeah.
perfect. I'll put that up and
It may already be out there.
okay, and we'll put it on our the Brighter
Hmm.
Futures website for the CARES
Hmm.
grant as well.
Yeah.
Multiple places so people can find it. So yeah, I
Yeah.
will do that.
And those aren't the only chemicals. I mean, there's more out there. It's just those were just ones that are an example. Some of the popular ones that are out there.
Sure.
Actually, let me see if I can't find the updated one.
Sure.
Here it is. Let me put this one into a PDF for you. Yeah. I know why I didn't have it as a PDF.
Nancy, as you look for that, we'll make sure for those that are still on the call that we get that information posted on the Brighter Futures website. But I also don't want to keep your time if we're just going to sit here. So
Okay.
if more people come in and there's a question for you in the last few minutes, I will make sure I get that to you and then get an answer and get back to
Alrighty.
them. So thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome. I'll get this to you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Thanks, Nancy.
You're welcome. Anytime. Bye.